Hello Gobs, welcome back to another episode of my Final Fantasy series. I am the Goblin King. If you didn't know, I do tabletop RPG stuff as well as video game RPG stuff, if you couldn't tell. And this is my series where I am playing through every single Final Fantasy, the single player ones, okay? I'm not doing 11 and 14. They might get their own episode, I keep saying that, but we'll get there when we get there. But anyways, I'm playing through the single player games, and then I give a review / retrospective now that I actually look back at it, because I'm reviewing it, but I'm also breaking it down, which that's more what a retrospective does, I so believe, and then I review it anyways. So I guess it's a mixture. It's one or the other. I'm just playing through the games, and then I'm going to break down the game, and then I'm going to give you my opinion on it. And since I'm talking about reviewing it, I might as well go over my review system. If you're watching these in order, it might be a bit redundant now, but my review system, I have 4 categories. I have graphics, visuals, and animations, 1. Then I got gameplay and mechanics. Then we have voice acting, sound design, and music, and then writing. Then I have merits, demerits, if something like that, and then I give my final thoughts over it, and then it's time for the final rating. Each category is worth 1 gold coin, with the music category being worth 2 gold coins, because it's important to me. Now, the aim for this series is not for a game to get 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. It's to aim above and beyond. At least a 6, 7, 8. The more gold coins, the better. There's an indefinite amount of gold coins a game can get, but I think the max is probably just going to be 10, if even that, if anything can even get there. But anyways, I want games to get above 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 is not the max amount, and that's about it. That's my review system. It's a bit weird, but it separates it from all the other different type of reviewers out there, or at least I hope. Anyways, since this is my review, this is opinionated content. So if there's something I hate and you love, tell me in the comments below, and vice versa. If there's something I love but you hated, then tell me in the comments below. And that can be anything about the game or even about the review itself, because I'm always open to improving my review style. And then, as always, if you couldn't tell, because man, this intro is already this long, but I am a rambler. I like to yap, and when I'm rambling or yapping, I will or might spoil the game. So this is your spoiler warning. That's it. If you don't want to be spoiled, then I suggest either skipping to the end to see what my rating of the final game is for whatever reason, or just go play it before you watch this video. Why would you click on a video about reviewing something if, I guess there are non-spoiler games out there. But whatever, without further ado, let's get into today's Final Fantasy Gob's Adventure, Episode 8. Draw! Of course, with Episode 8, I am reviewing / breaking down Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. Now, before I get into the actual review, I know after that intro, I want to give a quick personal note that Final Fantasy VIII so far has been one of my favorites. More specifically, it's the first one I beat, not including Final Fantasy 1, which I did that like over a decade ago. So you'll have to forgive me if I have a bit of attachment to it. But I'm still going to view it through a critical eye. So I'm glad I went through and replayed it, and it really reinforced why I like this game and why I despise some parts of it. But I'll get into that later. So with that, I might have a personal guilty pleasure gold coin, I might not. Let's see when I get into the review. So now, this is without the further ado part. This is where I should have put it. But now, I'm going to get into the review. Starting off with some short information about the game. It was developed and published by Square, also known as Squaresoft in the West, in 1999. 2 years after Final Fantasy VII. It was released on the PS1, directed by Yoshinori Kitase, with her Nobu Sakaguchi coming back as the executive producer, and the music by Nobu Uematsu. Now, I'm not sure if I saw it in the credits, but I'm pretty sure Kenji Ito, who is my second favorite artist right behind Nobu, also worked on the sound design for this game. So I was surprised to see that, if it's the same person that is also the composer for other games that have been published by Square Enix, so that was interesting to see. But anyways, Final Fantasy VIII is a sci-fi fantasy JRPG. It follows a group of mercenaries known as Seed to defeat an evil sorceress. More on this in the writing section. as mentioned previously, I played the Remastered Edition, which adds several new features but also makes the game look far better, at least when it comes to the in-game models. There are several other videos showcasing the visual change of the game, but I'm not going to. I just know that the Remastered adds like actual details to the in-game models, and I don't even know if they changed the cutscenes around or anything. So this isn't going to be going over the original game, this is going over the Remastered, which visually looks different. And speaking of visual changes, draw! Starting with our first section, graphics, visuals, and animations. Now, as I said, the remaster changes not only the in-game models, but I'm fairly certain it changes about every other aspect, the way the game looks. I mean, I don't know if it redoes cutscenes or if the cutscenes look as though they did on the PS1 edition. So I'm going to try to snip it off. I'm not going to compare it from 8 to 7 because this is a remaster. It's the same story-wise. It just looks different and might even play different compared to the original. But going off of the remaster alone, I like all the character designs. I like all the main characters, the side characters. I like the monster designs, even though some of them are weird, but they have a good in-game explanation because, spoiler alert, the monsters in this game come from the moon. I would hope something that comes from outer space, from something not of our world, looks not of our world. There wasn't any enemy, there wasn't any character that like hurt to look at. The menus are a bit bland, but overall I think the game, at least when it comes to characters and design and the style, looks fairly nice. Now the animations are more lively than what I played previously, because I played the Steam version of Final Fantasy VII, and comparing it to that one, because I'm fairly certain the animations didn't change, but the cutscenes are very good. I think for the PS1 they look very detailed and they actually have good movement to them. It's not stiff or anything. There are some cutscenes that look a bit stiff, like when Renoa's in space and she's running out of life support, or she's in a daze. Technically it looks very off to me, but that just might be a me thing. And then sometimes in certain cutscenes, since you can actually see their faces, because the original, not the remaster, you couldn't really see their faces because of how pixelated it was, but since the remaster, you can actually see their entire design. It can look really stiff in certain scenes, like this really good scene that I enjoy, where Renoa and Squall are on a spaceship in space. Where else is a spaceship gonna be? But anyways, it's supposed to be very emotional, but the faces don't change. So Renoa just has this like goofy smile plastered on her the entire time, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so scared and nervous," and she's just smiling. Or I'm not sure if it's a smile, but it's a straight face. You're seeing it on screen, but it's very like stiff and out of place. I still love this scene, but it's just like some of the animations just look a bit stiff at times. Most notably, battle scenes are very static compared to Final Fantasy VII. Like in Final Fantasy VII, the camera was always moving, but here it kind of feels like the scene only changes whenever you would do like an action, a command, or magic. Anytime you would do that, not attacks and not certain things, but for the most part, if you're casting magic or using the command, the camera will move and change. But sometimes the camera just straight up sucks in certain battle scenes, such as being implemented right behind the monster. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show it, or not right behind, but it's like off to the right, but situation somewhat behind the monster, and it's just really awful for the entire battle to be the camera to be positioned there. It's just really whatever. Now I could go over every single character's design, but I just wanna name them off real quick, at least the main characters. I'm not gonna be able to name off every single character in the game, but I wanna at least name off the 6 party members and some other characters. So we have Squall. I really like Squall's design. I think he's a very recognizable character whenever you look at him. His design kind of sticks in your mind. Irving, not as much. He has this trench coat and a cowboy hat, but that's about it. Zell kind of sticks out. Selphie has this goofy hair, in my opinion. The way he just curls like that, whatever. Quintus is, straight and serious. And then I like Renoa's design. I like these character designs, okay? I can't break down each character and like, oh, I really like the fur on Squall's jacket. It resembles a lion's mane, and he is like a lion at times, or whatever, I don't care. I like the way the game looks. I just hate how long, like, summon animations can be, which I didn't touch on that, but I enjoy the summon animations, and there's a reason for them to be long, but with 3 times speed, you can kind of just speed right through the summon animation anyways, and that's with everything in this game. If there's anything that's slow, you can just use 3 times speed, and usually it will make it just, well, it'll quicken it up because it's 3 times speed. But for the most part, going over the animations again, monsters actually react to regular hits, critical hits. If you use magic, like for example, if you use Meltdown, it melts the monster. If you use Blizzaga, it freezes the monster. And same thing against your party. There's like certain animations, like the Wendigo will like pick up one of your party members and turn them into a ball and throw them. And there's just lots of like little animations here or there, like in cutscenes and in-game cutscenes, not CGI, just regular cutscenes. There's like, I don't know, it's just there's more animation compared to the previous one. What else do you want from me? But the realistic proportion bodies really help, at least when you're not focused on the face and they're not trying to be focused on the face, so the characters aren't static and the characters are moving. These animations are really good. I just like it. What else can I say about the game? I like the way it looks. Some other stuff, there's portraits are back. I like the portraits, especially for like Legina. I think it looks goofy, but it's stuck with. I like it. I like the way all the portraits in the games look. I like the pre-rendered backgrounds. Of course, you run into that problem from the previous game because Final Fantasy VII also had pre-rendered backgrounds, but since it's the Steam version and since this is the remaster version, the characters kind of heavily stick out. Whereas in the original console, I feel like the pixelated models would work a lot better on the background. And of course, with Final Fantasy VII, another issue that occurs is that sometimes it can be hard to tell what you can interact with and what you're actually supposed to touch. Like there's consoles throughout the game that they want you to interact with, but like again in Final Fantasy VII, you have to line up perfectly, but whatever. You know, once you play through the game once, or if you're using a guide, then it's really not that big of a deal. I did get stuck in certain areas, but I'm not going to hold it against the game. This is me, I think, being a goober. But regardless, I can tell the animations, I can tell that this game was a visual improvement. It's not going to be everyone's style because, of course, that is all subjective, but I really like the environments. I like at least the battle scene environments are nice. I wish they were just a bit more active. I wish they were just a bit, moving around instead of being somewhat static. But as you get later in the game and you cast more magic and you use more abilities, the camera starts to move around at times. And there are certain battles, like whenever the time compression is happening in the story. I know I'm saying that and you guys probably don't know what that is if you haven't played the game, but who cares? It's a section called time compression, and the battle scene is constantly changing and it's going through all the different areas that you've gone throughout the game, because each area has its own unique battle scene, so it's just the battle scene's just changing around to that as if you're moving through time. That's pretty cool. And of course, the final boss, super great presentation. I think it's my favorite so far for a final boss. But I think I might get more into that in gameplay or writing or something. I don't know if I'll cover it later. I just like the final boss. Who cares? I like the way the game looks. I like the way the characters look. I like all of them. So we're just going to move on, okay? We're going to move on. I'm going to give this game 2 gold coins. Since I also rated Final Fantasy VII fairly high, we're just going to move on. Visuals, graphics, and animations gets 2 gold coins. Draw! Now, if you thought the last section was long, you better strap in for gameplay and mechanics. Now, I'm going to start with some general notes before I decide into the main mechanic, or mechanics, because this game is super complex. But let's talk about everything else first from what I can remember. I'm not going to be able to talk about every single little thing in this game. I'm going to try to talk about everything, but there might be stuff I miss. And if there's something that you enjoyed when you were playing the game, then let me know in the comments if I missed it. So without further ado, let's get this gameplay and mechanics out of the way. First of all, let's start with the remaster features. Aside from making some sections easier, I think, like in the final dungeon, you have to click all the buttons on the controller. In the original and the remaster, you just have to press 4 buttons at once. Because there's an organ and you need to open up a doorway, you just have to press X square, circle, triangle on the PlayStation. Whereas in the original, you literally had to click every single button on your controller at once. Then there's 3 features you can turn on and off at any time. The first one is no encounters. Self-explanatory, except in sections where the encounters are tied to a mechanic, which the only one I ran into was the deep sea research base. In that base, there's a light. You can only move when the light's off. If you move when the light's on, you run into an encounter. Even if you have no encounters turned on, you still run into an encounter. The second feature is cheat mode, aka limit break mode, or whatever it's called. Characters will continuously restore HP to max, whatever their max is at the time, and always have their limit breaks ready. However, this doesn't help against massive damage attacks or insta kills. And then finally, the most useful that I didn't use the others aside from accidentally turning them on, and no encounters when I locked the actual no encounters ability in-game, because I was just circumventing having to go through and equipping the no encounters and then unequipping it. You know, it's just easier for me to turn it on as soon as I unlocked it in the game. But this ability is the 3 times speed, as I mentioned before. Puts everything at 3 times speed, which is extremely useful, such as traveling, restoring draw points, battles, summon animations, rewatching already seen cutscenes. The only thing that doesn't speed up are certain cutscenes and certain CGI cutscenes, or all CGI cutscenes. And that's it for the remastered features. Let's talk about how hard it is. It's not that hard aside from the 2 super bosses, but every other death was just bad luck or mistake on my part. I'm not sure if a TTRPG can ever be hard. There was parts in like Final Fantasy V that I thought were hard, but I just had to switch up my strategy and think a bit better. There wasn't really much of that here besides having to switch some junctions. Like I said, super bosses. They're super bosses, of course they're going to be hard, but everything else in this game was fairly not easy. As long as you were prepared and you thought it through, you will be pretty fine. Because I didn't definitely over prepare or anything like that. Travel! You can walk, drive. Car has fuel for some reason, but never drove it enough to run out. Train, chocobos are back, but are more of a minigame than actual travel. You just walk around the chocobo forest, find the chicks, solo one out, capture the mama, boom, chocobo. It's the same as other games. You move faster, you don't encounter enemies. There's a portals on the map according to the interactive Final Fantasy VIII map that I use, but I never found them. So there's that, I guess. They get you to like weird parts of the map, but there are portals. So there's that. I don't know where they're at or how to get to them, but they're around. Regardless of the previous travels, about halfway through the game, or a little bit before half, you unlock a giant airship known as Gardens, which Gardens are where the mercenaries seed that I talked about previously. It is horrendously slow and can only move onto land from the shore because you saw it off in the ocean. You can only move onto land masses from anywhere that has a shore. When I say horrendously slow, I mean horrendously slow. Even in 3 times speed, it was a pain to explore most of the map. Again, it barely hovers off the ground, so there are certain islands that you can't get to until you unlock the final form of travel, which is the spaceship known as Ragnarok. It lets you move up and down, so you can actually get to islands that were cut away. You can't land in forests. It's also kind of slow. It's not as slow as when you're flying around in the garden, but man, 3 times speed is such a savior here. It's so nice. And that's it for the forms of travel. Which our next game feature is Triple Triad, which is this game's chocobo breeding, aka the side mini game that you can use throughout the game. I'm not going to break it down, but you can win cards, lose cards, find cards, turn monsters into cards, and then you can turn those cards into powerful items, which can then be turned into powerful magic, which is extremely useful. I just suck at Triple Triad. Also, if you play Final Fantasy XIV, at the Gold Saucer, they also have the Triple Triad minigame, but I heard no one plays it, just like no one plays it in this one. I'm just kidding. They made a magic card about it. I'm pretty sure a lot of people play Triple Triad. But let's just keep moving on. Limit breaks are back. Why wouldn't they be back? They're a staple now. But unlike in Final Fantasy VII, where a bars fills, it's more similar to Final Fantasy VI. The lower health of the character, the more likely they'll have their limit break. I think the chances increase if they're inflicted with the status element, or if they're buffed with the aura spell. You can also pass the turn repeatedly while they're in this state until the limit break is ready. But of course, that leaves you open. When their limit break is ready, there's a small arrow that appears by the attack button that you have to click right and select their limit break. So if you don't want to do a limit break for whatever reason, you can just do a normal attack, unlike in Final Fantasy VII where you have to limit break to regain the attack command. I'm going to go over each 6 main characters. There's a couple extra, but they only have one-time limit breaks, including Cypher, but they're not in the party for that long, so I'm just going to go over the 6 main roster, which will also give me time to rename them and familiarize with the main characters. Squall is the leader, usually, of the party. He's an angsty teenager who wields a gunblade. Side note, I love gunblades. Also, side note, whenever he attacks, you can pull his trigger on the PS4, it's the R1 button, and I think it makes the regular attack into a critical hit, but you have to time it when he hits the enemy exactly, or it will just make it a regular attack instead of a critical attack. So if you pull it as soon as he starts his attack, it already counts as a regular attack. You can also just go into the menu and just turn on auto gunblade, so you can just hit attack and he'll just automatically pull the trigger at the right time. If you're a wussy, I'm just kidding. Play the game however you want to play. But Squall's limit break is known as Renzo Zukin. No, I can say it. It's Renzo Kukin. That's how you say it. Renzo Kukin. That's his limit break. I might have butchered it. But he'll approach the enemy and then a bar at the bottom of the screen will show up. It's like a rhythm beat game. You have to pull the trigger as if you were making a regular attack as soon as that line is in the box. It'll also tell you to pull the trigger, but sometimes the game can be out of sync. So you just have to learn and pull the trigger yourself. Then, regardless of the amount of hits, even if you missed every single trigger, he may do a finishing move depending on what gunblade you have equipped it. More on this later. Renoa has a dog named Angelo, and throughout the game you'll find these magazines called Pet Pals. Read them, then select a move from the window, walk around, and eventually she'll teach him the move. Then, during battle, you click over, combine with him, and then a random move from the list that you learn will be selected. Eventually, she'll unlock a new power which lets her cast any, if I remember correctly, or if I read it correctly, that she casts any unjunction spells as though as she had max magic. Later on in the game, which I'm going to go over junctioning magic later, but later on in the game, you can just junction all your sets with non-attack spells, and then you can leave like Meteor unjunction, and she'll just cast Meteor at like max damage. It'll do a lot of damage, so you can like mess with her second limit break like that. But that's it for her. Sylvie has slots, which might sound familiar to Tifa's limit break, but they're completely different. Here, you keep hitting do-over, you'll see it on the screen, but you keep hitting it, flipping through a bunch of spells that will be cast a number of times based on whatever times you land on. She also has 4 spells that can be cast this way that aren't spells that can be obtained. These are solely unique to her, and they're completely random. It doesn't matter what she has equipped, it doesn't matter on anything. These are just completely random as you hit the duo. She has full cure, which heals all HP, kills all status elements. Then she has Rapture, which insta-kills most normal enemies. Wall, which is like using Shell and Protect, I think, or it just reduces the damage by half, something like that. And then finally, the super rare spell, which I've never been able to get. It insta-kills all enemies, including bosses and even the super bosses, including the one that has 1.3 million HP. As a side note, you only do 9,999 damage max. That's all you can do in one attack. So, but there's ways to cheese it, so like you do multi-attacks or whatever, and each one does that damage. But this just kills it instantly. It's super rare, I've never seen it. It's called The End. Very fitting. Ervin, I'm just gonna call him Ervin. He shoots his gun, that's it. You just pull the trigger like you're pulling your trigger on Squall, and you have like a set amount of time. You just pull the trigger and he just shoots ammo that you have, which you can either buy the ammo or you can use an ability to refine the ammo from items that you find. There's a bunch of ammo, you'll see it on screen. There's like normal ammo, fire ammo, dark ammo, armor piercing, shotgun, demolition, pulse, fast ammo. There we go. That's it. He just shoots his gun. Then there's Quittis. That's how you say it. Her limit break is blue magic. which is similar to other games, but here, throughout the game, as you fight enemies, they'll sometimes use their special moves so you can learn which move you're getting, but they'll drop an item. Then you can use that item on quick disc to teach her that move. There's several different pages. I think I've gotten up to like 15 different ones, and I haven't collected them all. But much similar to Blue Magic and other games, these are either useless or really good, such as G Generator and White Wind. And then the useless ones are like homing lasers and such. Hers is kind of the weakest, but I mean, I still like them. Hers is just at the bottom, which reminds me, I gave a short description on what Squall was, but then no one else. I guess I'll leave it deaf for the writing. Whatever, who cares? You guys don't care who to care. You already played this game, whatever. Or if you haven't, then I'll just go back over it in the writing section. And then lastly, we have Zell, whose limit break is, well, it's Blitz. Yep, it's back, and it's similar to Final Fantasy VI Saban's ability known as Blitz, where in that game you select a move and then you have to input the command and then he does that move. Very powerful, most played character from that game. His limit break is known as Duel, but we all know it's Blitz. And whenever you select it, you have either from like around 2 seconds to 10 seconds to input commands as fast as you can. And when you're doing the move, it pauses the timer so you don't have to prioritize short moves. You can just do whatever move you want, and eventually you might randomly end up doing a finishing move. Alongside his starting moves, you can also find magazines throughout the game similar to pet pals like Renoa for Angelo. You instead find Combat King, and instead of having to read it and teach him the move, you just have to read it, and then he has the move unlocked to use during duel. You can also go into the menu and just turn on auto, and then he'll just auto input the moves. I'm not sure what it does, and I'm not going to do it because I like inputting the commands myself. You can also do the same thing to Squall's Renzo Kukin's limit break. It looks way cooler than doing it yourself, but at the same time, I like the interactability of doing the limit break myself. You know, the amount of damage is based on how dexterous or how good I am at the game. It's not that hard, but whatever. Now, similar to Final Fantasy VII, which you probably heard me previously, I'm not sure if I talked, I think I talked about it, but there is the return of mini-games, but there's not as many, but they do provide a nice break and sometimes a challenge, except this dragon one sucks. I hated this dragon one, but there's also several others. There's like, one of my favorites is whenever you're stealing the president's cart, you have to input the right commands to dislodge his cart from the train. There's this one during the Battle of the Gardens where you're flying off an exosuit and Squall has to fight a soldier hanging on a rope, and you have to, it's like a little battle minigame that you have to input. Of course, there's Triple Triad, and you start to get the idea. There's minigames similar to Final Fantasy VII, but not as many, but they still can somewhat suck. One of the ones I hated, aside from the dragon one, was in the space section, you have to catch Renoa, who's floating through space. So you have to constantly keep moving the camera, so you have to constantly like keep clicking your D-pad so she's in the center of your screen. But twice in a row, she started off near the edge, and it was near impossible for me to, no matter how much I clicked, for her to ever get back into the center of the screen and catch her. So that was pretty annoying. And aside from minigames throughout the games, there's also a variety of side quests. I'm not sure if there's a large variety that also adds to the game, but they're not as rewarding. But anyways, they're just fun little quirky minigames, such as finding the alien named Popu, whatever. He's a cute little alien, and you have to travel around the world map, and then you get into a battle, and you just see him picking up random objects. Eventually, you trade 5 elixir, you get his card. Then there's this Opal Lake side quest that I never did, because I didn't want to spend the time going to each lake across the minimap. The point is, there's a lot more stuff to do in the game than just, you know, the main story. Usually you can go back to each town, and each town has a side quest attached to it. There's also a variety of side dungeons. Is there side dungeons? There's one where you can get a special summon that you have to beat in like 20 minutes, and then you unlock him as a summon. And and then if you do it before the story point, you unlock not a better summon. He has more moves, but it's not the same. I'd rather have the previous summon, but whatever. I know, guys, it's been a battle, but we're finally to the main mechanics. I'm sure I missed something, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, but please bear with me as I try to break this down. I've been mulling it over in my head. I'm going to try to break down the main mechanic of this game, aka junction. Now, when I say the word junction, in this game, it's to assign something to something. So, starting off, the very first thing you have to do is you have to junction a guardian force to your character. So you just have to assign a guardian force to your character. Then later on, you have to junction magic to stats. So you just assign magic to those stats. So, where am I going to start at with this giant meatball of mechanics, of complexity that I have to tear apart? Let's just start at Guardian Forces, because if you want your characters to do anything in this game, they need to have a Guardian Force junction to them. For the sake of the video, I'm just going to say equipped, assign, and maybe I might say junction, I don't know. But you get the idea, you guys aren't babies. In the game, there are a total of 16 Guardian Forces, which are just summons from previous games with some new ones, such as Eden and Tonberry and Jobo Cactar. But there's Doomtrain from Final Fantasy V comes back as a summon, among others. And then alongside these 16 that you're seeing on the screen, I'm not going to name them all, but you see them, you can see the images, you start to get the idea. There's also two other summons, one is random chance, and the other you have to use Gestal Greens, which, you guessed it, it's Fat Chocobo. And then the other one is completely random, and that is Odin. As I said before, you have to go to another side dungeon, you have to beat him, and then at the beginning of battle, he'll just randomly show up and just kill all the enemies. And then once you get to a certain point in the game, spoiler warning, he'll summon up during a boss fight. You're like, whoa, he's just gonna kill this boss? He gets killed, and in his place, Final Fantasy V's Gilgamesh shows up and replaces Odin. And then instead of at the start of battle, during any turn, Gilgamesh can show up and he'll use a variety of 4 attacks. Which one is the insta-kill like Odin does, Zancut, Sukin. He'll use Caliber, which does like holy to all the enemies. He'll use Excalibur, which is a reference, but he'll do 1 damage to each enemy. And then I'm sure there's this katana, I think it casts Holy Wars, which just makes all your characters invincible for a short amount of time. That's it. Those are the 3 extra summons. In the original, you could find more summons using it was like a little device. It's kind of like, what was it? Pokemon had a thing where you could like upload your Pokemon to the device. In that device, you could have Voko, the original Chocobo, go around and find items, and then he'll bring the items, and then you can use the items to summon other GFs or Guardian Forces into battle. But anyways, these 16 Guardian Forces have several abilities. Some of them are unique and some of them share. Several abilities, they get 2 pages. They learn abilities. As you defeat enemies in battles, you earn ABP. The ABP gets split among all the equipped Guardian Forces, and then eventually collect enough ABP, they learn their move, they move on to the next move until they either reach their max amount of abilities or they run out of abilities to learn. You can teach them other abilities using items in the game. These abilities are stats that they can junction magic to, command abilities, passive abilities, party passive abilities, stats that permanently increase upon leveling up, then Guardian Force passive abilities, and then finally refine abilities. Going through each one, stat junction lets you junction magic to stats. Command abilities are unique, so the main ones are Draw, Magic, Item, and GF. In this one, unlike previous ones where they either had set abilities depending on the class, or in Final Fantasy VII, they have the materia, the command materia, and if you equip the materia to them, they just have all those abilities ready. In this one, you get attack for free, and then you have 3 that you have to fill in with all the others. The 4 main ones are Draw, which lets you draw magic from an enemy, Magic, which lets you cast magic that you've stocked from using the Draw ability, Item, which lets you use an item from your inventory, And then finally, GF. It just lets you summon one of the Guardian Forces that are equipped to the character. Aside from those, you have reoccurring command abilities such as Defend, blocks all damage. You get Recover, which heals HP, Revive, which revives an enemy. Most notably, one of the funniest ones is Devour. You use this ability and then a sensor screen will show up and then you'll hear like munching noises, and then depending on what enemy you devour, it could give permanent buffs to the character or it just heals them, something along those lines. You get the idea. There's a bunch of command abilities. I'm not going to list them all that you can equip. And then every Guardian Force has 2 passives that you can equip. No matter how many Guardian Forces you equipped on a character, you can only have 2 passives from all of them. These passives include stat boosts such as HP plus 20% or 30%, strength plus 20%, magic plus 30%. You get the idea. It's passive abilities. There's unique ones like Expend 2s1, which if a character is affected by the double spell, instead of spending 2 of that spell, they only spend 1. And then Expend 3s1, so instead of spending 3, they just spend 1 if they're affected by the triple spell. You can also find rare items easier. You can turn off encounters entirely or have encounters. There's all sorts of different passives and party passives. Guardian Forces can also get abilities that increase the amount of passive abilities one can equip, such as 3 passives or even 4 passives. But command abilities can never go beyond the 3 that you get. So there's some type of like tactical planning there and how you want the character to play out. Such as a tank, you'll probably want to give them Defend. Or if you get a healer, you'll probably want to give Revive so you're not wasting items. Or spells. And then GF passives, you know what they do. I already told you what Refine does, and that's what Guardian Forces do. Now, I said they're like summons from other games, but in this one, compared to other games, unless you want to count Final Fantasy VII and leveling up the materia, which is completely different, they only get like 3 or 5 levels in that one. Here, they actually go from level 1 to level 99, which this increases their health. Why would a summon need health? Well, if you use the GF ability, or as I said, the summon ability, as you're summoning them, instead of having the character's HP, they technically take over for the character's health bar. So if that character gets attacked, the GF gets damaged until they get knocked out. And then of course you can't use regular potions and stuff on them. You have to use GF items such as GF potion or a GF returner, which is just a revive. Pretty cool. They're kind of like secondary characters that you just attach to your characters, and that's what Guardian Forces are. Your Guardian Forces let your characters be powerful and let you do everything in the game. If a character does not have a Guardian Force equipped, they can literally do nothing except attack. They're just normal people. That's all they can do. Now, you can get these Guardian Forces 2 ways. You either draw them from a boss, or you defeat them in battle and then you just get them. And that's Guardian Forces in total. I'm sure I missed something, but that's what Guardian Forces do. Still with me? Haven't skipped yet? Cool, let's talk about the second part. You heard me say it, but you can junction magic to stats. What's that about? Well, this game is unique in that there is no equipment, there is no armor, there is no accessories. You can rework the weapons, but I'll go over that later. They don't really do anything. There is no equipment. Instead, you use the draw command to draw magic from enemies, up to a max total of 100. This is both super unique and probably the worst part about the game, because it makes the game a grind fest if you want to have decent characters. Now, I said you can stock the magic up to 100. Per draw, you either get none in case you miss, or 9, and only 9. Depending on the character's magic stat, 100 plus guarantees you get 9 every time. So if the magic stat is under 100, which is probably most likely throughout 80% of the game, you're gonna have under 100 magic, you'll draw anywhere from a fail to 9 magic. And you can stock 100, you get the idea. You see a spell and you really want it, well, good luck drawing it. And not to mention, each character tracks their magic separately. You have 6 main characters. if you want the characters to have the really high-end spells, because I say it's a grind fest, but if you have a guide or if you just experiment and learn, oh, cool, curative magic's really good for junctioning to the health stat, so I'm just going to give my non-magic people all this life spells, and then they'll just have high life instead of having to spend this time having everybody draw. So there's ways to circumvent it. That's one way, is just having your magic users be the draw people, and then you can kind of just sit in an area, turn on 3x speed, just hold down X, and make sure your cursor's set to memory. You just 3x speed, hold down X, and have them just draw. But not only can you draw magic from enemies, you can also draw magic from draw points throughout the game, which most of them refill if you take enough steps. So, if you see a draw point you really like and you want each character to have it, well, you can turn on 3x speed and do 1,000 circles. My poor controller must be so worn out. Because if you draw from enemies, you know at least how much you're going to get, right? You can just slap on really high magic on a character, just let them draw an 8 or 9 every time. You know, they'll stock up pretty fast. Draw points are completely random. You'll either get 2 or 14. Yay! I tell you what, I wanted Ultima so bad because there's draw points on the world map, and there's 2 islands. The islands closest to heaven and the island closest to hell have draw points along the edges, and it has the best spells in the game. You only draw like 3 magic. You only draw 3 from them. You have 6 characters that you need to get to 100, or you don't need to, but you want them to get to 100, so you have really powerful characters. I beat the game in like 80 hours. I spent at least 20 grinding, getting either full stacks of magic, material for weapon upgrades, or getting the characters to level 100. This is by far probably the worst game for grinding. But that was optional. You don't need to do that. Like I said, you can just find a guide. Or if you play triple triad, like I said, you can get some powerful cards from the people you defeat and then just use one of the refine abilities called card mod and just turn it into an item. Then use the magic refine, turn that item into spells. So if you're not going to play triple triad, just turn them into the item and then you can just refine the magic. But the beginning of the game is a grind. But you don't need to be a grind. I think you could draw like half a stack and get through the game pretty fine until you reach the end game or until you collected a bunch of items. But drawing, it's not that bad. It's unique. And I'm going to propose a way to fix it just real fast. So there's like a couple ways. The first way is have a merchant that just sells magic. Make it so the character has to draw the magic at least once, and then just have a merchant that just sells the magic, and you can just buy stacks of magic instead of running around in circles, drawing and drawing and drawing, or standing in battle, drawing and drawing and drawing. Or just do away with stocks of magic and instead have it so there's a chance to draw the spell, but just have one copy of the spell instead of stacks of magic. You just have the spell once, but if you junction the spell, that person can no longer cast the spell. And then the higher the magic set, the more likely they are to draw. So make Ultima like a 2% chance to draw from an enemy. You know, have it like that. That way you don't have to draw a stack, you just have to get lucky and draw from it, which might be more of a grind, might be less of a grind. And now you have to balance between, okay, do I want them to cast a spell, or do I want them to have it junction to a stat? Now, not only can you junction spells to stats, but you can also junction it to elemental defense so they take no damage from fire or they even heal from it. And the most useful thing is status defense. You can set it so your casters can't get silenced, or your really fast units can't get confused and they just don't burn through a bunch of turns using all your good items. So the junction mechanic is super unique. When I'm not grinding, I enjoy planning and junctioning certain GFs to the right people. For the final dungeon, I sat through with a whiteboard and planned out the perfect GF to put on each character, and then using items on those GFs so everybody had all the base stats covered. That is really fun. That was really fun. When I'm not grinding, I was having a lot of fun. But not only is there a grind for magic. Look, drawing magic can be a grind, but once you find an enemy that has that spell, you can just have your 2 magic casters draw until they're full. That's easy. What's not easy is finding weapon upgrades. Now, previously I said there's no equipment, but you can remodel the weapons. Remodeling the weapon has no effect besides increasing base damage and increasing hit or critical hit chance. That's it, aside from Squall. Squall, depending on what gunblade you use, determines what finishing move he has access to. So his first one, he only has the one beginning finishing move. Whereas if you use Lionheart, he has all the finishing moves available. And he's the only one that works like that. Everyone else is just for base damage and critical hit. You don't need to get these weapons, but you want to. Oh, you OCD people, I know you're kind of like me, you want the ultimate weapon. These items are sometimes so ridiculous to get. At least once you find an enemy, you can encounter that enemy over and over, you can guarantee you'll get that spell. And if they don't have it, then just find them again until they have that spell, and then you can just sit there and draw. For these enemies, it's a random chance once you defeat them at the end of battle if they'll drop the item. Oh yeah, it's bad. So it's a grind, hoping that these enemies will drop the upgrade part that you need. And sometimes you get full on really useless items. I mean, sometimes they're useful because you can refine them into certain magic. But that leads me into why is it random and why do you have to do certain things to certain enemies, such as level up or level down an enemy. Because in this game, enemies also have levels. They go from level 1 to 99, including bosses. Now, this level changes depending on the area, if they're locked to a certain area. So this area might only have like level 20 enemies only. And then there's other times where it goes off your party average level. That also changes the enemy's level. Now, the final dungeon has anywhere from like level 20s to like level 100s. So like I said, you can level up the enemy or level down the enemy. Now why would you want to do that? Well, enemies change their moveset, they change what spells they have, they change what items they drop, they change what EXP they give, depending on what level they are. So from 1 to 19, 20 to 29, and 30 plus, the 3 different tiers, the enemies will change items. So let's say you need dragon skin. This enemy from level 20 to 29 will have dragon skin drop. They won't have it if they're 19 or below, and they won't have it if they're 30 plus. Isn't that fun? So now you have to go get Tonberry and use the level down and hope it levels it down to the right range. So I like it that it's complex, that enemies have levels. I like that they change it up, but man, if you want the ultimate weapons, if you want those stacks of magic, it is a grind. That's it. The grind's awful, but like I said, I have fun around the game, and you don't have to grind. That's just me. That was just a me thing. When I first played through this game, because I beat it twice, the first time, I barely grind, and I beat the game, so I still enjoyed it. So it's not that bad. I just had a really bad time this time. That's because I got full stacks of magic I probably didn't need. And I didn't play Triple Triad. And I heard Triple Triad can really help circumvent a lot of the grinding. So if anything, it's a skill issue on my part. I think the game is so incredibly fun. And it's so complex compared to all the previous games. Which complex doesn't mean it's a good thing. But I really enjoy the plotting and the limit breaks. And, you know, Triple Triad can be fun in its own right. And I like all the little mini games. And this game is just really fun. But not fun enough to get 2 gold coins. I'm sorry. The grind's just that bad. I can at least give it a passing grade. And final, gameplay and mechanics gets 1 gold coin. Draw! Okay guys, it's all downhill from here. That last section was pretty long, but these next sections are gonna be short and sweet, I assure you. Our next section is sound design, voice acting, and music. So, blah blah blah, sound design's good. The only voice acting in the game is when you walk into the Guardian Garden for the first time and you hear hut to, or something like that. And then, lastly, for the last voice, look, guys, I know the sound design is good in this game. Before I get into the music and the final part of voice acting, there is a bug. You leave the game idle for long enough. I don't remember this happening in the first playthrough, but I would like put the PlayStation on rest mode and then, you know, pick it up later And then whenever I come back to it, since I idled it for so long, it's like the track gets jumbled and it sounds so weird. It just like plays like a bit of the melody and then it'll be like a horn or trumpet or whatever. It just like plays random parts of the song at random time. Honestly, it's kind of funny, but it's also really annoying because I have to, I have to close and reopen the game in order to fix it, because even if I go to another area, it still persists. And then the other sound design thing is that if you do the summon animations in 3 times speed, since it doesn't speed up the sound of the game, it kind of just all like starts to clip together. So the summon animation will be finished, but you'll still be hearing the sound effects from the summoning still happening. But it's whatever. I don't care. It can be loud sometimes, but whatever. The sound design and the final part of the voice acting is good, but I was extremely caught off guard by the main theme of this game, or the love song of this game. Thong? Whatever. But the main theme for this game is Eyes on Me, composed by Nobu Uematsu, performed by Faye Wong. Let me tell you, you got one winged angel in Final Fantasy VII. I'm not sure if that's an actual choir or not. It could just be a really good synthesized sound. But hearing actual lyrics from a PS1 game, it's crazy. Like, I think the Wikipedia said it's one of the innovative factors in that you have actual vocals. I love this song to pieces. I've listened to this song probably, it's not the most listened to Final Fantasy song out of my liked music, but it is up there. It's like the second best, it's like the third or second most listened to music. The first one being, I haven't really listened to that one. It's the Final Fantasy 15 Comrades theme. I forget the name of it every single time, but I love that song. I don't listen to it as much anymore, but Eyes on Me, we're focusing on Final Fantasy VIII. Eyes on Me is so good. It brought me to tears, or not tears, but it made me teary-eyed because it plays during the Rinoa and Squall sequence in space, when they're putting their feelings forward and you actually start to see Squall open up and Rinoa open up to Squall, and it's just, I love this moment, and you just had everything beforehand, and it's so good, and then Eyes on Me just starts playing, and it's so amazing. It's so good. There's also other tracks that use the main melody of Eyes on Me throughout the game. And of course, the music besides Eyes on Me, it's also good. You have Force Your Way, which is the boss theme. You have Don't Be Afraid, which is the main battle theme. I like the overworld music. I like Balam Garden music. I like the Ragnarok theme. I like A Board Between Something and Predation. It's all good. I don't know what else to say. The music for this game is some of the most I've ever listened to. Now, granted, after I beat a game, I tend to go back and listen through like the soundtrack. But compared to Final Fantasy VII, I've listened to a lot of Final Fantasy VIII music, and I love it. Like, the final boss section has 4 different final boss themes. Now you have Premonition, which is the Sorceress theme, which plays whenever you fight the Sorceress throughout the game previously. That plays first. It's really good. You go to the next phase, it plays the Legendary Beast, and then when you beat that one, it goes to the next song, which is Maybe I'm a Lion. That song's amazing, and then it goes to the final boss theme, which is probably one of my favorites in the things. Like, I love Winged Angel, don't get me wrong, but the Extreme is incredibly fantastic. And just hearing the 3 other songs combined into it, it reminds me so similar of Dancing Mad. Like, I think you could line each of the songs up and have something similar to Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI. It's so good. I don't know what else to tell you guys. Sound design, voice acting, and music, it's 3 gold coins. I love it. It's amazing. Draw! Let's get into our final section. You're almost free, guys. You're almost free. But thank you for sticking around. So, hey, this is for you guys who stuck it this far. And we are getting to writing. Spoiler warning! I'm going to give a short description of the story. Now, guys, I cannot do justice to how complex the story is, how well written the story is. I love the story. I enjoyed it. No matter how much I explain the story, I cannot explain it well enough. I recommend watching a breakdown video if you really want to know more about the story, or just playing the game yourself, not sponsored. But I cannot do justice to how good this story is. But I'm going to try anyways. Now, there are some weak points, and sometimes you wish the characters would just be a bit more forward. Squall. But I have to remember, most of them are like 17, 18. They're not even adults, aside from Quitus, but barely. She's 18, which, you're still going to make a lot of dumb decisions when you're 18. So I just knock it up to putting the fate of the world on a bunch of teenagers' hands. Like Squall, throughout the game, he often gets shafted into the leader position, even though he expresses how much he doesn't want to be a leader. They just keep making him a leader, because everyone looks up to you. Whatever. Don't force people to be leaders if they don't want to be leaders. But it's for the better. It does help him develop later on and lets him be more forward and be more open with the other party members. And it helps him combine and become a more unified team, I suppose. I'm not an expert in breaking down the story. I can't tell you the themes. Like, one of the themes is learn from the past. Okay, you can't change the past, but you can change yourself by reflecting on the past. That's like one of the main themes, and I'm not a literary expert. I can't break it down. So here's me. I said I was going to give a short description. I haven't even got to that. So let's just talk about a short synopsis. Ignore the train. The train's part of the ambience. The main story is following a mercenary group ran by Squall called Seed. They take children of all age and prepare them to be soldiers, or essentially for hire mercenaries. Countries around the world will hire Seed to take on missions, and then they accept for monetary gain. That's it. They're just essentially mercenaries. Now, the true reason is to fight the sorceress, which are like, they can either be good sorceresses, they're mostly evil. So the whole point of Garden and Seed and all that, did I say spoiler warning? Whatever, it's writing, you should know it's a spoiler. The whole point of Garden and all that is to take down the sorceress. Now, Sid, who shows up here as one of the head of the Gardens and eventually relinquishes it to Squall, his wife is, throughout most of the game, or at least half of the game, is one of the sorceresses, and he makes Garden knowing that he's training people to kill his wife. And that reveal, kind of crazy, but let's just continue on. You follow Squall and his comrades, which I said before, Noah, Irving, Selfies, Zell, and Quitus are the main characters. He has his rival, Cypher. And then you have Sid, the head of the Garden, his sorceress wife, Idia. You have the big sister of the 6 main characters, which is Elowen, who keeps sending them back into the past so she can learn more about Lagina, and Kiros and Ward, which are characters that show up later, and these flashbacks kind of feel like fillers sometimes, but you get attached to these characters in the past, and I'm bouncing all over the place. Like I said, the story is so complex, but the main point of it is, not only is it about Squall and his team trying to stop the sorceress, but they also have problems among themselves, like Renoa has to find her place. Like I said, Squall has to deal with the duties of being a leader. Quitus is there. Selfie has her garden targeted by missiles. Irving, he clams up, but he's basically like a lady chaser, whatever. I do like these characters. I can't do them justice. They all kind of go through their own separate arcs. Like Quitus has to deal with, she was a teacher, but she turns out she's not a good teacher, so she has to work through that. Zell messes up throughout the story, and he has to fix his mistakes as well. And there's just all sorts of like little things happening. You got the flashbacks happening. You got a sorceress from the future trying to mess with the present people, and there's just all these little things. I'm not going to be able to go over it, so let me talk about 2 of my big favorite moments throughout the game. The first one is when, well, there's a couple big moments. I said 2. I like any scene that has Rinoa and Squall talk to each other. So there's the first dance scene, which you see here, where Rinoa gets Squall to dance. And then you have this where they're in Fishman Harbor and Rinoa is talking to Squall and trying to get him to open up, which that scene, there's like 4 different things you can do, change, depending on what music that you have, because the other main party members put on like a band thing, which is Selfie Stream. So there's also that, but you can have like an Irish jig, or you can have Eyes on Me, an instrumental version play, and then there's like 2 awful songs, and then that changes what Rinoa and Squall say to each other during the scene, which is pretty cool that they even worked something in like that, but it has no impact on the scenes later. But there's a couple other scenes between them. They fight at times, you know, they go through the quarrels, and then finally you have when Squall starts to open up, that space scene. I really love that space scene. It's so good. And then there's other scenes like Squall Make a Promise. Like I said, any scene where Squall opens up to Rinoa is fantastic, and all it does is I wish there was more of that. I just wish Squall was a bit more open. He has this famous catchphrase, whatever. But they kind of also poke fun at that throughout the game as well. So it's all fun. It's charming. I really like any moment between Rinoa and Squall. I loved seeing them at the end, hug and kiss and all that. It's so great. You just get to see this love story unfold. But let's talk about the other big moment. After returning to Selphie's original garden, you go there and Irvin reveals to them that all of them, except Rinoa, grew up in an orphanage with Cypher. So each one of them, you go through like this flashback where they're all connecting the pieces and you're watching the puzzle pieces fall in place. So you might be wondering, why didn't they remember each other in the first place? Well, Balam Garden is the only garden that uses guardian forces that you junction to the people. No other place does it. Why? Because it has been shown that people who use guardian forces have memory loss. Call it a crutch, but that was a pretty cool reveal showing that they were all growing up in the same orphanage. And it kind of isolates Rinoa. And then now Rinoa has a arc where she wants to prove herself useful and stuff like that. So not only is this a great reveal showing that all the characters grew up together, it also shows while Squall is so lonely, or he's kind of like a lone wolf, or he tries to act like it. It shows why Zell is called a crybaby and all that. But since they equipped the Guardian Forces, they kind of had these memories gone. But since Irving had never equipped the Guardian Force, since Selphie equipped it when she was a child as well, but Irving never equipped it until he showed up. But since no one recognized him, he was so afraid that they had all forgotten or moved on, so he was just so afraid to talk about it until that very scene happened. And it's just a great scene. You learn about Elwyn, the person that you see throughout the game that's sending you into the past, was also at the orphanage. You learn that Idia, who is one of the sorcerers that you're hunting down, was the matron. It plays the sorcerer's theme, and it's so moving. Like I said, I can't do the story any justice, and I've rambled on too long. Just give it 2 gold coins, okay? Writing, you get 2 gold coins. Draw. Wow, what an abrupt way to finish off the review. Now, before I total all up, I want to answer the title in the video, which is, why does no one talk about this one? Whenever anybody is asked what their favorite is, it's always 6, 7, 9, 10, and 14. You get some 15s and 16s in there, but those are primarily the biggest ones, and 8's always skipped, and it just leads me to why? Is it because it doesn't hold a flame to 7? I like 8 more than I like 7. Would I play it again? Probably not for a while, but I'd give it another chance. I would try Triple Triad, and I would try not to grind as much so it doesn't weigh down the gameplay, but I can't figure out why no one likes 8. I don't know, it might be the style change, it might be it just came out at a bad time that no one was playing it, or it was released along some other game that overshadowed it. 7 was the first 3D one and it kind of didn't do anything new. I think it did tons of things new, but maybe other people didn't see it that way. So I honestly have no idea why no one talks about this one. In the comments, can you guys tell me what you think? Why no one talks about this? Maybe people just overall hated it. I don't see anything bad, and when I go and look at ratings, all of them are like 9 out of 10 for it, so I'm like, people rate it good, it's just no one talks about it. People talk about the Final Fantasy VII remake, they talk about wanting a Final Fantasy IX remake, they love Final Fantasy X, but Final Fantasy VIII always seems to get not talked about. I don't know why. I can't place my finger on it, but that's my guess. My guess it just came out at a bad time and just no one remembers it compared to Final Fantasy VII, I suppose. I personally loved it. If you can't tell by the review Final Gold Coins, I love Final Fantasy VIII. Maybe I'm just trying to stick out and be different, but I can't find myself to hate it. Even after all that grinding, I still look back on it fondly. Okay, not the grinding, but the game itself. Everything between the grind was fun. Now, this Final Fantasy, I think, would do well with a remake. I think it would be fun to run around with a gunblade and doing gunblade mechanics or whatever. That sounds like fun. Like Final Fantasy XIV, give it credit where credit's due, has the Gunbreaker class in there that you have to get to like level 70 or whatever. And that class is fun-ish, but it would be fun to see a more like Final Fantasy VII, 15, and 16 have done where it's more action. You have to input combos and stuff, and I think using a gunblade like that would be really fun. And you cut out the draw system, and I think leave the story somewhat the same, or try to cut out more of the filler parts. I think some of the flashbacks are unnecessary, but for the most part, I think it would be an amazing remake, but I guess that's personal. So, my final rating for the game, 2. That's right. 8 out of 5 gold coins, because it's my favorite one so far. And I think I said last video I was going to give it an 8 out of 5, but I didn't intentionally did it. I just went off my heart. And my heart says it deserves 8 out of 5. But what do you guys think? Was I wrong? Was I too rambling and all over the place? Probably, but that's all I'm going to do. So tell me in the description, if you want to see the next one where I review Final Fantasy IX and break it down. Hopefully it's a lot simpler. So far, it's a lot simpler than Final Fantasy VIII was. That junctioning section, I was dreading it, but I got it done and over with, and I'm out of here. I'm done. That's it. Subscribe, like, share, do all that good stuff. Would I recommend playing this game? Yes, with a guide, so you know what magic to draw, so you're not spinning and wasting your time drawing magic for every single character. It's like the only time I say play it with a guide that doesn't tell you exactly how to play, but just so you avoid grinding for hours on end, like moi. But that's it, not sponsored or anything, just go play it. It's a fun game. I enjoyed it, I like the story, I like the music. You've seen the review, so go have fun. I'm out of here. So I hope you guys have a lot of a day. May your adventures not include anything with draw.